Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Tacoma-Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. It's good to see everyone here. We've got 31 people in the room, which means it must be time to start the meeting. So, Rosemary, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Rob, and welcome everybody to our open table where we connect with each other and learn from each other and work together to end the crisis of homelessness. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe who've lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. And beyond this awareness, we call ourselves to uplift the voices, experiences, and histories of Indigenous peoples of this land and beyond. Over the past few days, I've been more aware than ever of the importance of celebrating small victories in the face of enormous odds. We do this every day and every week when someone finally secures a safe shelter or a permanent home, when funds are available to help fix a car or pay a past due rent, or when a fundraiser or grant or contract makes the work more possible. So this week, when President Biden signed the scaled down reconciliation bill dubbed the Inflation Reduction Act, I celebrated the victory for doing something in the right direction. Mostly, I thought about the too small commitment to the environment and to resolving the biggest driver of inflation, the cost of housing. According to the White House, this act, quote, takes the most aggressive action on climate and clean energy in American history. But that may not be saying much given the challenge and the lack of decisive commitment in the law to end dependence on fossil fuels. As Northwest poet and environmental activist Gary Schneider says in a poem titled Milton by Firelight, he says, "Oh hell, what do mine eyes with grief behold? Oh hell, what do my eyes with grief behold?" More hell and grief in the housing area, and while the act offers green energy incentives to homeowners to lower costs, there's little to celebrate in this new legislation regarding housing. As Diane Yentl of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition said on Tuesday, despite, she says, housing being a key driver of inflation, the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't address limited housing supply, skyrocketing rents, or increased homelessness, a disappointing and short-sighted decision that leaves struggling renters and people experiencing homelessness to suffer from continued inaction. Such an act, she concludes, is missing the point. But still, she cheered us on with her assessment of small victories. So here's what she says in the communication we mostly received this week ourselves. She says, our collective advocacy made a difference. Nonetheless, because of our hard work, we are that much closer to the finish line the next time we create a window of opportunity. Together, we moved the Democratic Party's stance on affordable housing to one that is much more ambitious, more willing to call for and fund solutions on the scale necessary, and more focused on solutions that are deeply targeted to the lowest income people. For the first time ever, we have a president and a HUD secretary who frame housing as a human right and who are committed to achieving universal housing vouchers and ending homelessness. And we have built Republican support for many of our solutions, support that, if not always evident in Congress, is apparent throughout the country as indicated by our public opinion polls. As we in Tacoma and Pierce County continue our work in the face of continued sweeps of encampments, evictions from mobile home parks, no sanctioned public spaces for vehicle dwellings, and the realities of a 5-year emergency, Diane Yentl reminds us of the options. Paralysis, when we focus only on the hell our eyes with grief behold, or creating new windows of opportunity, celebrating small victories while continuing to demand much more. I'm honored to be here with you, demanding more while affirming action in the right direction. Today, I breathe deeply into that spirit and welcome you all to this open table, especially those of you who are joining us for the first time or returning after some time away. So first, before we ask you to introduce yourself, a few of our norms for operating together. And usually Rob puts these in the chat for me, so that's good. So be sure to keep your mute function on when you're not speaking. Background noise is difficult for us all to deal with. And if you're doing anything that waves your arms about or moves you about while you're watching this, stop your video at least for a time. And then use your raised hand function on the Zoom anytime you'd like to be recognized. If you don't have the capacity to do that, if you're calling in or in some way and there's some you need to get our attention, do whatever it takes, but start at least with that as the first thing to do. And then finally, in terms of the Zoom, the chat that we have here is a really powerful networking tool that's saved and available later. You can put contact information in there, events that are coming up, questions that you have that there isn't time to answer. Lots of people will answer you whenever you ask a question, so feel free to do that. And then in terms of community norms, I just will focus on one today, and that's listening to learn. That our main purpose is to learn from one another here so that we can take the kinds of actions on an everyday basis that keep our spirits strong and also address the needs of the most vulnerable among us. So with that, let's see if there's any folks here today who would like to say hello and just let us know your name, and if you're with an organization, what that is, and then if you can put your information in the chat, that'd be great. So just raise your hand and we'll recognize you.
Lonnie, I see you. I think you meant to raise your hand. You put up the clapping icon.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. My name is Lonnie Arnold, and I'm the executive director of the Racial Reconciliation Network. We're bringing pastors together cross-racially so that we can work together with a regional view in the area. And just excited to be here and to be able to connect with you all, and looking forward to connecting our pastors with this group as well.
Thank you, Lonnie. That's a wonderful goal, and we're delighted to have you join us.
Thank you.
So if you can't find yourself in a way to say hello to us here, and you would like to let us know who you are, please do use the chat for your information and anything you're interested in. Oh, Thomas, there you are. Tom, I'm not sure how you use your formal name.
It took me a minute to find my button to raise my hand.
Oh, all right, great.
I'm fairly new. I've introduced myself before, but I just wanted to introduce myself again because my attendance is somewhat sporadic. So I'm Tom Breitenbach. I'm with Beacon Health Options. I'm the manager for the housing department that we've recently started, and we have recognized the importance of integrating behavioral health services with housing. So we want to support that effort.
That's wonderful, and thanks, Tom. I recognize you from before, but I was not sure of your group, so I'm glad you let us know.
Thank you.
And there was another hand up, Leah. I think it was Lee. Maybe I missed it.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my phone. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes,
We
we can.
can.
Fine, go ahead.
My name is Lee, and I was just joining the meeting because I'm just trying to get some feedback and resources and things like that of that nature, and just to kind of see where everything is and what I can do with on account of everything. So
That's great, Leah. And as I said before, if there's something specific you're looking for, do put it in the chat, and somebody from here will respond, and put your contact information there too, so people can contact you.
perfect. Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, I think that's it, Rob, unless you have more to say.
Well, since you're here, I know that your time is a little bit limited today. Do you want to mention the event that you and Teresa are hosting? Started yesterday and continues, or I guess it starts today and goes tomorrow as well.
Sure. Well, thank you, Rob. I, didn't want to use this time for that, but I'll just say for any of you who are interested in supporting the New Connections, a program that helps women coming out of incarceration, we have what we're calling a Fabulous Finds accessory fair. It's at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church, which is on I Street. I don't have the address right with me. I should have the flyer, but maybe I had it right here. No, I don't have it. Anyway, I wasn't thinking I would do this, but yeah, it's I think we sent out everything. We sent it out to the coalition, and I will post that in the chat before I leave. So anybody that you might like to suggest come, and we have purses and scarves and jewelry and a few things that might be for unisex kind of approaches, and we have some, just a whole lot of things, belts, and it's accessories. So things you probably don't need, but you might support a good cause. So thanks very much, Rob, for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you as always for getting the meeting kicked off this morning. So let's shift to our first item on the agenda. And this is the item that we do every week. I actually carved out more time on our agenda today because we have so much going on in the community that I knew we would probably have a pretty lengthy conversation about what's happening on the streets this week. So the purpose of this segment of the meeting is to share with the group of folks who are attending what they're seeing change on the streets, any particular needs that are popping up. In particular, we've just come through another couple of days of really warm and, in this case, unusually humid weather. And I know people have been getting water out to people. So if you'd like to share about that, that would be good. And unfortunately, it looks like we'll have a couple of warm days again next week. So don't pack away the water yet. So I open the floor. This is an open session. Just share. Folks can raise their hands, and I will call on you one by one so that we can share what we're seeing and experiencing on the streets. And we'll start with Jeffrey.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I was out delivering water this week. The campers seemed to be doing pretty good in the camps that I went to. Loved getting the water and a little bit of time to spend, just in fellowship, just spend a little time talking to people. There is some camps down south of Puyallup Avenue, in that area behind those businesses, really hurting for services, and not just water, but I mean, they are just really hurting for services. So if anybody wants to open up their ideas for helping them out, that would be beneficial. I don't think anybody else is visiting them or talking to them. There's about 40 to 50 people kind of scattered down in that area. So just want to be aware of that. The camp up on 35th and Pacific is doing well. A few more tents have been added. I still haven't heard a final count of the number of people that are there, but they are getting a little bit excited about the idea that the city will be turning them into a sanctioned encampment. So that's been a good talk with them. And pay attention to next week. We expect at least 3 days over 85 and possibly more. Thank you.
Lavada, I saw your mention in the chat about tracking the deaths of those who pass away while they're homeless. That actually is something that Ed Jacobs has been doing. He interacts with the medical examiner's office and has been able to set up a relationship there so that you might be aware he does quarterly memorial services to recognize and name those who have passed away on the streets. So that is happening. Next hand up I see is Richard.
Just a few things. Yes, Jeffrey, we're out there at Puyallup Avenue several times a week, and it is a particularly difficult situation out there. A couple of things that have gone on. Yesterday, there was a meeting at Marlene's Market in Delhi, about 125 people, a lot of frustration, meeting with about 10 uniformed police officers. The manager and deputy manager were there, and Allison Griffith was there. More of a venting frustration meeting, but some coordination may be of that meeting. So a lot of people to show up at 7:30 in the morning. We're continuing to distribute water, as is Jeffrey, doing the best we can. And I know others are out there as well. When you ask about needs, Rob, one of the things that's been coming up, and I was doing a better job of this earlier, but needing to keep first aid equipment in the car, because I keep running into people with open wounds that are needing some of the basic bandages that we provide. So I'm trying to get my head back around that so that when we see it, that we're at least able to provide it if it's needed. And then the key thing too, coming up, two encampments were posted this week. The Burlington site had a 30-day notice, and the city contractor has already begun doing some work out there with picking up debris. And the other one is at Center Street and South Tacoma Way, has a 7-day notice. So I presume I'll be out there, I think it's next Tuesday morning, probably 9:30, 10 o'clock, watching what's going on there. Again, another sweep with the city not able to answer the question of no place to go. Somebody earlier this morning mentioned that it's been 5 years since declared a crisis. Doing some calculations, it was at 1,927 days ago that they declared this a crisis, and there is still no place for these vehicles and tents to go when they conduct these sweeps. So those are a few things that we're seeing going out there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for attending the meeting yesterday at Marlene's. It's helpful to, not all of us can be everywhere, so it's really helpful to hear about the frustrations people are venting and some of the more constructive conversation that follows. Monique, I see your hand up.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. So I have seen a lot lately, people on drugs or with mental health, but in the middle of the street. So we have got to try to help folks get out of the middle of the street when we see them. I don't know what the drug is or what the mental health issue is, but I am just seeing that a lot in this area of Pacific and 84th and 82nd. Also, sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know. So today, Senator Murray's Washington, D.C. team will be at Fob Hope's Veterans Village to take a look at what we've got going on there and hopefully get us some funding for next year. But, if you happen to be in the area, don't worry about, just drop on in if you want to, toss your hat in the ring. They'll be there today at noon.
That's great.
Yeah, and then we've got we're housing number 11 this week. So I thought that we were open much longer, and we've only been open since May. I thought it was longer, but yeah, number 11 getting housed. So I just want to brag about that.
Congratulations on that, Monique. And remind me, so I know it took a long time for the site to open.
Yes.
What is the timeline that usually the city with emergency sites sets a timeline where the site will then shut down?
Correct.
And usually it's a couple of years. Does that start from that May date, or do you know?
So we're given 18 months.
Okay.
The contract states that if we lose time on the beginning, no fault of ours, then we can get that time back. So I know that we're good through 2023. They've already told me we're good through 2023. So, and then we'll just see what happens. Hopefully, if we can keep getting people housed and showing this model works, maybe they'll extend us a little bit.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for the work you and your team are doing.
Hey, thank you.
Lisa, I see your hand up.
Hi there. I just have a question. So I actually live out on the Key Peninsula, and I gave water out to a couple yesterday in their truck who I see regularly on the road I walk in on and home. Anyway, I just happened to, pull up and ask them if they needed water, and they were very grateful. They had indicated that the shelters out here are out of water. Has anybody heard anything about that? And if so, where can people get water out here?
Lisa,
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Lisa, Bob Volbrecht here, Gig Harbor, Key Peninsula Housing. Hi, nice to see you. we're actually been trying to contact that couple that parked by the little home mini mart in the gas
Oh,
station.
really? Okay.
Yeah. Somebody, I forgot, I think it was Melissa from Tacoma Pro Bono lives out there as well. She pointed them out. We haven't been able to contact them, but there aren't any shelters there. Now there's a food bank just down the street from them, less than half a mile where they're parking.
Yeah, did I say shelter? I'm sorry, I meant food bank.
Oh,
I meant
well,
food bank, sorry.
yeah, no, the couple things, the Key Peninsula Community Services Food Bank is less than half a mile down the street. And then just about a half a mile south of that at Lake Bay Covenant Church, there is a little food pantry, and we are stocking that at least 2 times a week with Gig Harbor Rotary. And I was there yesterday I think we put about 30 bottles of water in there, and I've got some 1 gallons in there. So that they can get the water at the little food pantry at Lake Bay Covenant. There's also another one at Key Peninsula Lutheran, which is just north of where they're at.
Yep.
I have not heard the food banks are out of water, so I'll check on that. But we have 3 on the KP and one in Gig Harbor. And
yeah, it was like 12:30 yesterday, and I ended up giving them like 8 bottles of water because I had a bunch of it in my car. But and they were very grateful. But yeah, they said that they were out, that the food bank was out. And I didn't even ask which food bank, but they said the local food bank is out.
I'll check with them this morning, and I would love to get more information from you about that couple, because we've had two or three people trying to connect with them to try to get them some services and have not been able to do it.
I see them quite a bit because I walk down there. So if there's a message that I can get to them, I mean, I'll tell them about the 2, the churches, but
I'll send you some information today.
okay, great. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, you two. And those are the kind of connections we love to see happen so that people can get the help they need. Sally?
We take cold water out, and we're looking for very small clusters of tents and individual people. And what we're observing is people are really getting weary. The heat's kind of wearing everybody down. And we're also noticing that people who've been kind of walking around on their own are starting to attach themselves a little bit to some of the 1 and 2 tent clusters, partly because they know cold water's coming at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but also because I think they're looking for a place to be more stable than just walking around. We're also encountering more people with pets, and so we're providing water for cats and dogs as well as humans. I'm worried about the next round of sweeps and what that's going to do to how people are moving around trying to find a place to be. Something different has to happen with sweeps. So we need to get a lot rowdier about that, I personally think. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, Sally. Let's see, anyone else with updates on what they're seeing on the streets? Yeah, Bob.
Just a quick addendum. I wanted to mention a little bit more about the little food pantries. Thank you, Lisa. Gig Harbor Rotary now has 4 on the KP, 1 in Gig Harbor, and I think we're going to add 2 or 3 in Gig Harbor. And the concept originally was just to get a little bit of food, maybe some hygiene items in there that the community would store. What's happened is that extremely high usage is now getting them stocked twice a week. We're also using those locations for water as well as our regular water drops. And I think someone mentioned earlier, first aid gear and needs. We're also now expanding that to more hygiene products, first aid bandages, Neosporin if we can get it, all of those things. And those pantries are becoming used almost probably 10 times a day, 4 out of the 5 of them. And it's a wonderful thing, but we're now checking with the food banks and also the churches, because 4 of them are on church properties, and they're going to start stocking them more than twice a week. So it's become a good thing to build a relationship with the people in need there. And we also post all the community resources available with phone numbers, contact information, which includes also some of the organizations from the Tacoma, Pierce, Central Eastern Pierce County side, if they choose to do that as well. That's it.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks again for the work you're doing out on the peninsulas. And we can close out this section of the meeting. I did want to mention to people that we do try to keep the pchomeless.org website updated as these warm weather or any inclement weather situations come up, so that we can help point people like those of us here in this room who do some outreach in contact with resources like where to find water, where to send people to cooling centers, and that sort of thing. So do rely on that pchomeless.org site when the weather's at its peak, like it seems to be off and on every week here this summer. And thank you to everyone who's been doing outreach and for sharing the information here this morning. So the next item, excuse me, on our agenda, I don't see Poe here with us yet this morning. So why don't we shift gears a little bit and go ahead and do our breakout conversation. And that means we'd love to queue up you, Timothy, if you want to share what people spoke about last week.
Yep, ready to do that.
Okay, let me find the document here.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Well, the first thing you'll notice is the lovely poem that Rosemary cited last week. I've decided to just put Rosemary's little gems at the top of this document every week, just because I like them. And beyond that, last week was a little bit weird because we did the conversation right at the end of the call, and I think a lot of the groups, well, a number of the groups just didn't report back. And the ones that did so unusually briefly. So it is a rather short, kind of self-explanatory list of one-pagers. Some really good ideas in there. One-pager that portrays the current gap between what's needed and exists. That would be really cool. Some suggestions for myth busting, something that I really like this idea. It's the last one, info sheet for housed people newly experiencing campsites, when to call 311, when to call 911, basically how to, some advice that recognizes what they're going through and gives them some ideas for how to cope constructively with that. You know, some fairly generic stuff in here that is probably beyond the scope of a one-pager. Like, you know, the one-pager on understanding homelessness with resources for the deeper dive, that strikes me as at least a two-pager, but still a useful document. You know, that's about it. You can look at it. It's, you know, pretty scannable. And again, you know, when you report back for your groups, give us as much detail as is reasonable. And remember that what you put in those notes is what informs the roundup.
Yeah, thank you very much, Timothy. And I'm glad that even though this is a relatively short list of feedback, that there's a number of items on here that remind me that we may be good to share or reshare some of the information that Lori and Teresa and others have put together, especially around myth busting and some of that, because some of that has been created, but clearly there's not it's not top of mind with everyone. So that's a great reminder. All right, so let me see here real quick. Yeah, let's go ahead and move to our discussion for this week. And I wonder, Garrett, would you like to help cue this one up? This was kind of your brainchild.
Sure, Rob. Thank you. One of the types of shelter that we have discussed in the Adequate Shelter for All plan, which is part of the Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness, is very large sanctioned encampments. So there's a kind of a design of, we need, you know, like 6 more tiny house villages of 50 people in Tacoma with one focused on families. We need, you know, we need this many of that type in this community. And one thing that's included in that is some very large shelters, like 200 to 300 people at an encampment or at a large tiny house village. And the reason for that is because there's a significant cost savings in that model. And so the idea would be get more people into a place they won't be harassed, and that they do have access to sanitation and some site security and possibly case management. And so I just wanted to, so my question is, like, how much do we think that is a useful model across Pierce County? And as we struggle with increasing numbers of people experiencing homelessness, like we're gonna continue to build out basically the shelter models as they're designed largely in that plan, except what we've not been doing is building out any more congregate shelter, really. And we've not been doing large sites. And so I was just sort of wanting to get a take in the room, right? So the benefit is, you know, more people get a safe place. The downside is large sites can be much less safe than a smaller site for obvious reasons, and might be harder for a community or a neighborhood to absorb, right? So you might want to look at more like a port setting, like where the stability site is. So I guess my question is, should we be thinking about some of those as a community? Or is that something that has more challenges and more problems than it's worth? We'd rather sort of, again, in a world where we don't have enough funding for the right kind of permanent housing for everyone and the right kind of shelter for everyone, is it a good use of our resources to try to serve more people in larger sites with slightly less services? If I said that well enough, I feel like
I think so. So the way that I put it in the agenda is along the lines of a question that we could all consider and discuss for a few minutes, and that is, should the coalition support the creation of large safe sites if the opportunity to create them comes along? So that's what we're going to discuss today for about 15 minutes. But before we do that, I see, Patricia, that you have your hand up.
Are we discussing this in our in a
breakout?
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Yeah, no problem at all. So what I'm going to do is I will split us up into small breakout groups of 4 or 5 people as a reminder, especially for folks who are new here. These breakout conversations have dual purpose. One, it gives an opportunity for folks in the room to get to know each other and network. It's an attempt to try to add that networking element that we once had when we met in person, add that back in this virtual setting. But it's also a great opportunity to assign somebody in your breakout group to take notes. Again, as Timothy mentioned, as much detail as you can, and then share those notes in the chat when we return. Because the hope is that we build some community knowledge and utilize the expertise and knowledge of everybody here regarding this topic. So let me set up our breakout rooms here.
Rob, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can you be specific as to what we are going to be discussing? I found that the last time we broke up into our groups, it was a little bit vague with some of us as to what exactly the topic was. I am writing like crazy with the contact information and reading the chats and listening to you, and it's Friday.
Yeah. And
So
if you're like me, maybe the coffee hasn't kicked in. So so here's what we're discussing is the question is, should the coalition support the creation of large safe sites if the opportunity to create them comes along?
Okay.
And for context, previously the coalition really has advised that we feel the best practice is to create a number of smaller sites, but the question here is if the opportunity comes along to create one or two really large sites, would we support that?
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate it.
No problem. I definitely understand, and I will send us off to the breakout rooms now. I will also put the question in the announcement field a couple of times during the conversation so that folks can see it. So we will come back here in 15 minutes. I hope everybody has a good conversation. So welcome back, everyone. This is one of my favorite parts of every meeting when I get to see people on the screen because you left your camera on and you got pulled back in the main room. So I hope that was a good opportunity to network and have a conversation on our topic today. I see some of the notes starting to flow into the chat, but please, whoever took notes in your breakout room, if you could paste the notes into the chat. Again, that allows Timothy to do the work that he does to compile the notes and bring together all of our ideas. And this is a particularly interesting topic. How was the conversation? Just maybe folks want to share a couple of quick comments before we move along.
Not enough time.
That always is the case. Yeah, that always is the case. Or at least if it's a good and not too confusing topic, that's the case.
Yeah, give us some focus.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, I can tell you that in our room we talked a lot about the fact that safety and security is compromised the larger the village, larger the encampment, and so that will be an issue in itself. And then, the mental health issues that I deal with just 4 people in my encampment who have severe mental health issues. I can't imagine what it would look like at that scale of amount of people. So, and then the theft and the drugs and the alcohol and there's a lot to consider if you want to try to have something this big. I mean, safety, security, that's going to cost you.
Yeah, I appreciate that concern. And I know just in the reason that Garrett wanted to raise this question is just because, again, of the potential. There's clearly challenges to the idea of having large sites. There also are some financial benefits, not only financial, but one of the pieces of context that Garrett and I were talking about yesterday is that we have a community, especially in some parts of Tacoma right now, where the level of conflict over the issue of homelessness and the level of tension is really boiling over. And so we're in a situation where people are clearly living in an unsafe situation now. Would it be an incremental improvement to be in a large, safe site with management of a structure of some kind, without if those dollars came along to be able to do that?
I think
so. Go ahead.
Just real quick. What happens a lot in these communities is obviously the people who are together kind of build family, build a village, right? And if you have that large of an encampment, how do you do that? Now, Michelle, which I just learned, she's a veteran as well. We talked about barracks. She mentioned, kind of a barrack setting. Then you build community per floor rather than this big piece of land trying to build community.
Yeah. Yep. And Nick, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, right now I manage a site on the 69th Proctor Timms 4 site, which is 66 tiny homes, and right now we're currently at 71 residents. Just like to piggyback off what Monique said, we passing along information throughout the interstaff between case managers, and security is a big thing too. So when you have a big site, we all have to be on the same page. No information has to go missing, or even though we have, digital logs, we have to make sure that we keep in constant contact with, regardless if it's email, text message, or calling each other. So that's a big thing too.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely hear that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what folks discussed and the ideas that came up in the chat, and appreciate everyone's time for this, even though it always feels like it's not enough time. So thanks for doing this exercise. So let's move to our regular government updates section of the meeting. Let's see here. I don't believe that Caleb from the city of Tacoma is on the call today. Anyone else from the city of Tacoma on the call stepping in for Caleb today? Yeah, I don't see anyone. And so I did get an email from Caleb. You may remember that I sent the notice that I'd received from the city regarding the 2 sweeps that are going to happen. Both of them, the notices went up on Tuesday. The Center Street site across from Tacoma Screw being the first one that has a 7-day notice, and then the second one on Burlington down a few blocks from South Tacoma Way and 48th area, where that site's got a 30-day notice. I did ask a couple questions of Caleb regarding the site and how many people were there. The city's estimate at the Tacoma Screw site is that there are 15 or so people. There's the HEAL team had also told Caleb there's a number of abandoned vehicles on the site as well. So there's more vehicles in some situations than there are people there. And then in terms of the reason for the Burlington Way cleanup being cited with a 90 or a 30-day notice, it's impacting the operations of the business there for General Plastics. And blocking access to another property that is run by business. So he also shared with me that I asked him rather pointedly the question about where are people going to go and is the city advising folks. He didn't directly answer that, but he did say that the city is working in conversations with 2 providers about safe parking, including RVs. So hopefully he'll be able to give us more information next week. Kathy, I see your hand up, and then we'll go to Pierce County Human Services update. Kathy?
Yes, I just have a couple questions about those sites that you mentioned. So the one by Tacoma Screw is more vehicles. Is that what I'm understanding? And then what's the deal with the Burlington site? Because I wanted to ask Richard, because I saw his picture of that sweep notice, and they're citing a criminal trespass as they can't use a camping ban as an excuse to sweep, so they're using some sort of criminal trespass. Are people I hate this word, but I don't have a better description. Are people squatting in buildings on Burlington? Is that why they're trying to sweep that area? I know where it is. I'm just not familiar with what's happening.
So I think some of these would be good questions to pose to Caleb when he's actually here. But from what Caleb sent me today, I would guess the criminal trespass piece is related to the blockage of access to one of the businesses there. And Richard, anything you would add?
Well, yes, but that's a little disingenuous. I talked to one of the campers there they were being told that they were blocking the access on the road. Well, Burlington Plastics or somebody else, or not Burlington, General Plastics, they've put out 20 or 30 of the NIMBY blocks there. So they themselves have blocked the road. It's a mess. It's a large, difficult encampment. There are vehicles, there are tents and structures, boats. There's a dog kennel. It's a big, difficult encampment, and it's been left to neglect. So that they're giving it 30 days is interesting. I saw the city garbage contractor out, I think it was yesterday, starting to do some pickup, but it's a very difficult situation. And it's also adjacent to the airport property, which leads over to the 50th and Madison vehicular encampment. And there may well be another 100 or 200 people on that large, I don't know how many acres it is, but that large property that consists of the airport going up to Tyler Way. There are people everywhere back there. And so good luck, city, as they move those people out, where are they going to go? Anyway, there you go. We're out there quite a bit. It's dicey. It's one of the encampments I'm reticent to walk into by myself. Anyway, there's a lot going on out there.
Well,
Okay, I'll send you my information in the chat because I lost yours from before.
Thanks, you too. And again, I'll see if Caleb can offer some more details next week when he's here. So Garrett, were you going to be doing a Pierce County Human Services update?
I'm filling in for Mr. Rogers again. Yeah. So really his announcements he wants me to pass on are around funding. So we have 2 current notices of funding availability. One is for the Continuum of Care annual normal funding. So typically that's renewing existing projects, but some new projects can be considered. And the second is the sort of expansion. So that's new funding that's coming in. I think there's 4.5 million over 3 years. I've kind of screwed this up a few times, but I think that's the number. And so that's about $1.5 million a year. And that's funding that continues indefinitely. Basically, if you're competitive, which really means meeting kind of minimum standards. So all of that's on the bids page that the county has. I also wanted to, which I'm throwing in the chat, I also wanted to highlight some upcoming notices of funding availability. So those are in the chat as well. I don't have the date set for this, but this shelter access hub, that funding will become available. So it's kind of some weird money, some funding to do some remodeling, but really to have staffing, 1 staff member 24/7. It's hard to imagine this being anything other than adding on to an existing shelter operation, but basically providing a resource to coordinate shelter beds across the county. This second one is eviction prevention. So this is basically the morphing of the rent assistance money and much smaller program because funding is a lot less, not $100 million a year anymore. So that funding is going to be coming out probably mid-September. So there's going to be, I guess, $3 million a year for 2 years for eviction prevention for households with leases. And then there's $2 million for 2 years for households that are doubled up and households that are in a motel or hotel. And so that's basically what we call category 3 of homelessness, and it'll be diversion-like services. So you could think of it as homeless prevention because that's how we categorize it when we talk about homeless projects, but really it's just expanding our coordinated entries diversion program to assist people that aren't literally homeless but need assistance reestablishing permanent housing. So not super deep, right? More like diversion, one-time assistance, but I think it'll be really interesting to see that. So that money will go to up to 5 providers. So I don't know exactly how that'll shake out. But again, that notice of funding availability is looking like mid-September. We were talking mid-August, and I'm not sure why that shifted. And the last one, second to last one is the tiny house village in an underserved geographic area which for us mostly means not in Tacoma. And that's good money. That's enough capital to develop the site and operations for 2 years, like with good staffing model. So I think that's 2 generalists 24/7 with case management and behavioral health on site. And I think 800,000 for development. So that's a standard cost that like a stability site or Lehigh Tiny House Village sort of. And so that'll be coming out soon. It could be as soon as September 1st. Still have to actually make sure the money is in our bank account before we put that out. But and the last one is some funding for medical respite. And this is through something called Home ARPA funds. And this is capital to help develop that. So it's not enough to do a whole project, but it's enough to get started and or possibly meld into another funding stream. So that funding is going to be probably available sometime in Q4. So October, November, December. That is, I think we've just submitted our proposal to HUD. So if that goes smoothly, then it could be sooner. If there are changes they want us to make, then it could be a little bit longer. So that's funding updates from the county. And I'd be happy to take any questions, but only ones I know the answer to.
That's quite the caveat.
I think everybody knows I'll make the answer up if I don't know. So it really it's any questions.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody if you're wrong. So, all right. Any questions for Garrett? All right, so let's shift over to our next report out. And I see Valerie is on the call. Do you have anything to share about rental assistance?
Garrett did a wonderful job. The only reason we shifted it was because we really thought it was unfair to ask all of you amazing folks to do the COC and the eviction prevention at the same time. So trying to be fair and allow you some breathing room in between. So expect that eviction prevention NOFA very, 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 very soon after you submit your COC NOFA. Is as close as I can get to giving you a date. Other than that, we're doing great. Everything's going as smoothly as possible. And we're just a huge shout out to the 9 amazing nonprofits who are just continually serving despite even them still battling with COVID in many, many cases. So just a public shout out to them because they've done a lot of the hard lift. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Valerie. And I'm not sure. Do we have anybody on the call from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department who's going to offer an update today? I know Jenny was out. And I know Adam was going to fill in, but has a sick child. So we may not have anybody, but we will. Adam let me know that he will send an update to our mailing list with all of the latest information from the health department. So let's shift to our next item on the agenda. And Garrett, actually, I might have you help me a little bit on this one. This is, I thought it would be helpful to briefly let folks on the coalition know about the presentation and the work that's being done related to the comprehensive plan to end homelessness. The advisory board for the comprehensive plan implementation met on August 5th. And part of that, the main focus of that meeting was to have an initial introduction to the consultants who are doing the work to address the first goal in the comprehensive plan, which is determining what kind of model would be the best for Pierce County to use for a unified regional approach, a coordinated approach to homelessness across the entire county. So I do have the slides from the presentation. I thought I'd share those on screen briefly, but maybe Garrett, you and I can tag team any real pertinent information that we think we need to share with folks. So do a quick screen share here. And I'll go through this pretty quickly. The meeting happened on August 5th. The organization that is doing this work is out of the Bay Area in California. And again, it's trying to look at different approaches that could be used in Pierce County that would fit our county's needs the best regarding having a coordinated, unified regional approach to responding to homelessness. The consultant group that was chosen is called Social Change Partners. And the presentation that we had on the 5th was very high level. So you can see the goals that were outlined, values that were described by the organization. And then they went into sharing their understanding of the overall goals of the comprehensive plan. There's those 6 goals that we're very familiar with, and the first one being create a unified homeless response system, including a unified regional approach with central decision-making authority of funding and services. There's a level of detail that we probably don't really need to go into, but I did want to share it on the screen, which is the kind of timeline. This consultant group is currently starting work on phase 1, as it shows up on this slide here. And essentially that is starting to do key informant interviews. And so the folks who are all on the advisory board, including myself representing the coalition to end our Tacoma Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness, started doing interviews this week, half-hour interviews to help inform the consultants' work, but also to try to determine other people in the community who would be really good for the consultants to talk to so that they can understand the needs and set up the best responsive approach, recommend the best responsive approach for Pierce County. As you can see, this is a 3-phased approach that they have set up with monthly reporting that will be done. And it looks like the findings and recommendations for comparisons that will go to the advisory board happens sometime in November. And I think this full report goes back to, it's supposed to be done in December. Anything I'm getting wrong there, Garrett? Okay. And they mentioned, since this work is all about what kind of structure might work best for Pierce County, they pulled out the different examples of structures that exist elsewhere that were mentioned in the comprehensive planning documents. So those include the regional office and the continuum of care structures that exist in these cities. Richmond, Virginia, Austin, Texas, Houston, Texas, and Columbus, Ohio. They also brought up local government agencies that have universal or unified regional offices, including Snohomish County and one that exists in Guam. And then the model that many of us who've been paying attention to this issue have heard a lot about with the King County Regional Homeless Authority. And so I mentioned key informant interviews are taking place right now. One of the things that why I wanted to bring this up is because I would love to hear from people in this coalition meeting. If you want to send me the names of some folks who you think might be good to help inform this plan, I can pass those along to the consultants. There is a real goal to try to have a very broad amount of input, very diverse input, so that the folks that they're hearing from have lived experience, have a lot of experience in our community, and represent all parts of our community. So that was why I thought it would be important to bring this up. You can see here on this last slide at the bottom, the website socialchangepartners.com if you want to learn more about the consultants. So let me stop my screen share. Garrett, anything else that you would add?
Well, I would just emphasize that, so on the county side, I'm essentially supporting this contract with them. And, you know, we have not provided guardrails on what they need to be considering, other than that we're very interested in them looking at a wide variety of models that are successful or what's appropriate here. So there's not much of, I guess I'm saying that this is as, you know, honest and vulnerable as we can possibly be trying to bring information in. So there's not really a hidden agenda, and our goal is for them to provide us with different models and how they might work in Pierce County. So just want to reiterate that we want to make sure we're getting the right people providing feedback, because it will inform what is put out as options.
And thank you for your question, Kenneth. I did drop the link to that PDF, which is actually the entire agenda packet for the August 5th meeting. I dropped that in there. You may also want to scroll down in that. There's some interesting data related charts that Garrett pulled together and that we went over in the meeting as well. So it's good information for those who are curious about it. And then I also put my email in the chat. So if you do know of some people who you believe would be helpful for the consultants to speak with, I would love to hear that, and you can send me an email at that address. Those informant interviews, I kind of hate to use the word informant because it has a different connotation, but those interviews started this week. I do know that Caleb from the city was interviewed before I was, but I think we were the first two that had taken place. So there's going to be some time and opportunity for people to weigh in and offer more thoughts and insight. Again, the whole idea is that we recognize this is a change in the way that things are going to be done, and we want to have the system that is best for Pierce County. I think one of the frustrations that a lot of folks have is that you can't really take just carbon copy of what has worked in another community and apply it in Pierce County and think that everything's going to be fine, because each location is different in terms of things like housing availability. So appreciate that. And let me move on to some quick advocacy updates. I will, just so you know, I know my coworker Poe was unable to join us this morning. I'm not sure what was up with that, but I'm sure we will see if we can get Poe back next week to talk about the Legislative District Leads program that's offered by as part of the advocacy work that the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance does. So I think that'll be content that folks in this room will be very interested in. But in terms of upcoming advocacy opportunities in our community in the coming week, they're looking at the city of Tacoma. The direct content of their meetings this week on Tuesday are not related to homelessness. However, on Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. approximately is the once a month virtual community forum. And that is once again an opportunity to talk to the full city council, in this situation over Zoom, although I think they also do it in person in council chambers. But anything city related that the city council has some sort of purview over is a fair topic to make a comment about. And typically, depending on the number of people who are involved, you'll get up to 3 minutes to speak about the topic that you want to make sure the council hears about. This is a great opportunity to encourage the city of Tacoma to start finally creating solutions to address the issue of where people are going to go when these sweeps continue happening across the city. So if you have the capacity to speak to the city council this week, that's one opportunity at 6 p.m. on Tuesday. Sally shared with me earlier that the city council study session on August 30th that'll be coming up features Tacoma Housing Authority. So that will definitely be one that's of interest to this group. And on September 13th is the next scheduled update from the Neighborhoods and Community Services Department regarding homelessness. So we'll all want to pay attention to that too. There are other meetings coming up in September, early September. The Community Vitality and Safety Committee on September 8th will hear the funding recommendations for mental health and substance use treatment funding from the city of Tacoma's 1/10 of 1% sales tax. So that will be one of interest. And then later in September, that same committee, which meets on Thursday afternoons at 4:30, we'll hear about an anti-displacement report to deal with the issue of gentrification and new development. I don't have any insight into critical Pierce County Council content for next week. I don't know, Garrett, if you're aware of any homelessness related topics coming before the council.
Not this week. In the start of October, they're shifting some money that they temporarily moved away from implementation of the comprehensive plan. So there's basically a budget update. I think it's October 4th.
Okay.
And I don't think we'll need much support for that. It's more administrative than anything else. That's why. But I will pass. If I notice something, I will pass it on.
Yeah, thanks. And one of the challenges that we've mentioned before in these meetings is Pierce County's agenda documents for next week don't post until later on Friday, so after this meeting. But if there is anything critical, I will send it to the mailing list so people are aware. And that's it for advocacy updates right now. Let's see. Next on our agenda, we have updates from the Safe Sites for All committee. I know that Jan is not here. Anyone else who attended the committee meeting on Monday who has anything to share? Okay. Briefly, I can share the conversation this last Monday was related to, of course, the hot weather response and the latest updates on safe parking. I know some of us were last night at the Associated Ministries quarterly meeting regarding that they hold with the community. It was held in person actually last night, and Paula Anderson did do an update on safe parking and how that program is going last night. It was a good content, not a real large group at this first in-person quarterly meeting in the last 2 years, but if you do want to hear updates regularly on the issues around safe parking, that is a typical piece of the content that happens every week, every Monday at noon at the Safe Sites for All committee meeting. Those meetings, the links to those meetings are on the pchomeless.org website if you'd like to join us. I know the more the merrier. And anybody else who attended that wanted to share anything further? All right. And any other coalition committee updates that we wanted to share? Typically, I would have Rosemary weighing in here, but she's getting ready for her fundraising event. Well, once again, there are a number of other coalition committees that meet regularly. The links to those meetings are all on the pchomeless.org website, and anyone with an interest is welcome to join. I do know that links on the website, besides the Safe Sites Committee that meets weekly, the communications work group that has been meeting on Wednesdays is listed on the website, as is the governance work group. The governance work group is currently focused on creating the content for a new About Us page on the coalition website. And then, of course, the steering committee meets on Wednesday afternoons at 3. And that's the opportunity steering committee is really whoever shows up. So it's not an elite group of elected leaders. It's who shows up. So if you have an interest in helping steer the content of these meetings, the steering committee meeting on Wednesday is another opportunity to do that.
Yeah, they'll let anybody in, including me.
No, especially you, Jay. All right, so let's move on to kind of just some good of the order announcements. Does anyone have announcements or success stories that they would like to share with the group today? Yeah, Richard.
Just a small success that popped up. This came through on Facebook where somebody had a tent put up next to his backyard fence and was reaching out using Facebook, did not want to bring the police in and made some calls and to 311 asking for some outreach, but specifically saying he did not want the police to be coming. I sent some messages, but before I heard from him, he had gone out, introduced himself to the person, just by taking a different approach, established a rapport. The person had said, "Hey, got plans where I can go stay someplace else in an apartment." Anyway, it all transpired, and by taking that kind of an approach, it was a good interaction and resulted in success of somebody leaving that location and moving into some sort of shelter or housing. So that was kind of fun watching that. But it was I don't want the police coming. I want to solve this problem. That was a breath of fresh air.
Thank you, Richard. And Jeffrey.
Yakima Avenue is filling up again with campers, as is G Street. They're condensing down now. So that and Reverend Bill Curlin and I are talking about working with reaching out to legislators in the state about the impound fees that are suffered by many homeless when their cars or RVs are impounded by city or county. And they're very, in most cases, people are losing what home they have. And so that's something that he and I are working on right now.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Anyone else with items they'd like to share kind of for the good of the order or for letting folks know about success stories? Kathy.
Well, I'm just grateful for the presentation that Dion did last week for St. Vincent de Paul, because I was able to refer someone to her, and she's currently working with her to help her and her children get into more safer housing. So I really appreciate that she was there. I had no idea that they did all the stuff that they do.
That's great news. Thank you, Kathy. And Jay?
Just as a reminder to everybody, because we're coming into the last couple of months of the farmers market, food stamps are available at the farmers market, and they will match you up to, I believe it's $20 or $30 to your 10. So they will help you out by multiplying your food stamps if you go. And then you can help out your local farmers. So anybody who has food stamps can get substantially more from going to the farmers markets in town, like at the Star. I think it's Star Center is on Tuesdays and Broadway's on Thursdays, and Ruston's always open year round.
Thank you for that reminder, Jay. All right, so let's we actually are going to wrap up today's meeting a little bit early. I do want to offer an opportunity, since we're not as rushed today, if anyone has any feedback on today's meeting, things that could be done better for next week, please let me know. I know not everyone necessarily wants to do that live on camera. You can drop that in the chat as well. And you can even send it to me directly on chat if you don't want to share it with the full group. But we do want to make these meetings better every week. Sometimes we go feast or famine. Last week we wrapped up the meeting actually after 11. It's our goal to try to get people out of here on time. So I guess today's the time back from last week. I appreciate everyone being here. If you do have an interest, a small group of us will stay on the call and work on organizing content for next week's meeting. But for everyone else, I wish everyone a happy weekend, stay safe, and we'll see you all next Friday. Thank you.